street, they were completely rammed. They were filled up to the gunnels, they were queuing down the street. They said, you should have been here last week. I swear, you should have been here last week. Oh yeah, you should have been here last week.
So welcome to this week's brand new episode of You Should Have Been Here Last Week, the podcast that takes a peek behind the comedy curtain to give us an insight into the world of the comedy business. And it's hosted by myself, Steve Gribbin, and fellow comedian, Mr. Paul Ricketts.
Hello.
There he is over there, eating chicken pate for his breakfast.
No, not pate, a patty.
Oh,
A Jamaican patty.
Oh, okay. I thought that was very sophisticated, actually, chicken pate. Anyway, and today's guest is the wonderful, wonderful comedian and promoter in her own right as well, the wonderful Susan Murray. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning. When did you first start? When was your first ever gig? Can you remember it?
I can distinctly remember it. I did a comedy course at Jackson's Lane Community Centre, which is no longer there. And I was taught initially by Dave Thompson, who was Tinky Winky and best friends with Ben Elton. And then I was subsequently taught by Rob Hitchmo, and it was the course graduate showcase, and it was the 18th of May 1996, and I actually remember the date. It's one of the few dates I can remember. And I played guitar at my first ever gig. I did a song called "Sex and Drugs and Sausage Rolls," which was a mistake of Ian Jury's "Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll."
You could have been number one.
And I realised, and the only way, I wasn't even going to do it right, but the only reason I did it is because there was a guy on the course who went, well, I'm doing the showcase. And I thought, well, you're rubbish. So if you're doing it, I'm going to do it. And it's only because he said that I even did it. And I'll tell you who was on my course was Daryl Martin, who runs Just the Tonic. So I've known Daryl longer than anyone else in comedy. And I'll tell you who I was there the first week was Paul Foot.
Wow.
Okay, and he only came for 1 week because he was already doing gigs. So literally saw him for 2 hours and then never saw him again, obviously, until we were all on the circuit. So, yeah, that was my first gig, and that's how I got into comedy, like a lot of people. And now, ironically, Hitchmo, who was my teacher, when he goes snowboarding in the winter, I stand in for him. I'm his stand-up teacher. And, I always do the class, tell me something interesting about yourself. And I always start off with that, right? And then I go, I was taught by your teacher 28 years ago, and they all go, oh, wow, really? But it breaks the ice, you know what I mean?
Do you remember, the venue for your first gig, was that Jackson's Lane as well? Where was that?
Yeah, there was raked seating, and a friend of mine, Jez, who was a musician, he'd come to tune the guitar for me because I was so nervous. You know, when you can barely breathe, you're so nervous, and your arse is just doing that, twitching away. And he was so drunk. I think he'd been on a weekend sesh. So I think he'd been up all night. So he was battered when he got to the gig, right? And he fell over the chairs during the show. I was like, oh, God, it's just so typical of my mates. But I remember thinking at the gig, I was third best. That's all right, isn't it? And I should have put that on my poster, third best in the Jackson's Lane class of May 1996.
So why did you do the course then? What made you, what were you doing before that?
Trainee camera assistant working in 3D stop frame animation. And I'd worked at a company called Three Peach Animation down in Borough. And then I ended up working on a contract for a show called Craps and Villas, which was on Channel 4. It was kind of an after pub show. It was on at 11:15. And it was a comedy. And a girl called Sarah Kennedy, who I'm still friends with now, who's just hysterical. She's so funny. I confessed to her that I really wanted to do stand-up, and her sister had done a course at Jackson's Lane with Hattie Hayridge. She went, oh, my sister's done this course, so you should do this course. So when I finished that contract, just towards the end of working on that first series, I went and signed up for the course. And then about 5 years ago, there was a woman in animation, like a kind of all-dayer thing at the BFI, and Sarah was on that. So me and a few of the old crew went along to see it and to support Sarah. And Sarah was there with her sister and Hattie Hayridge. So it was like the three women that had led me into doing comedy were all together at one point. So I had to get a photograph of that, obviously. And I really liked the fact that it was all women that led to that path.
I mean, when you first started, did you have you didn't call yourself Susan Murray, did you?
No, I didn't.
What was your name?
It was the Harpy. Not even Harpy, it was the Harpy, which was a nickname. Because basically where I'm from in Wolverhampton, like everybody just gets a nickname. There's like Shad, the Druid, Nick the Frog. Everyone's got like a ridiculous nickname. Nobody goes by their actual name. And I was christened the Harpy. I used to work in a petrol station. I had bright red hair, working in this Shell garage on the Tetnall Road. And all the punks used to come in to fill up their paraffin tokens for their like shared student houses that they were living in because they didn't have heating. It sounds so antiquated, all back in the day. And so because I had red hair, they're like, oh, she's got red hair, so she must kind of like be in our sort of tribe. And they were all older than me. They were all the older punks. And they sort of like took me under their wing, and like they've been like mates of mine, like, you know, ever since really. So I was only like, how old was I? 17? I wasn't even old enough to work you've got to be 18 to work in a petrol station because of fire regulations. And I was like 17 and still at school and doing my A-level. One of the best jobs I ever had, actually.
How long did you continue to use that name, though? You dropped it only after a couple of years, wasn't it? Or
because of Phil Harris, who runs Screaming Blue Murder, because I was like, I'm not sure about this. Because it is just my nickname. And then Phil Harris rightfully said to me, I think when you come on as a woman, because this is like so long ago, this is like, you know, nearly 30 years ago, when you come on as a woman, there's already a barrier there because people don't trust women. And then you've got a kind of slightly odd name, and that creates another barrier. And I just thought, he's probably got a really good point there. So then I dropped it. And then the first week I dropped it, I did a gig for Screaming Blue Murder down in Wimbledon, and Andrew Pipe was on, and Andrew Pipe went on as the Harpy because I wasn't using it anymore.
He stole your material. That's funny. That's really.
I think he even did a couple of my jokes. I think he tried to do a Wolverhampton accent and did my accent joke at the top as well. And then he lost his mind. So, you know, it's karma, isn't it?
Oh my God. Yeah, indeed.
It's one of the lost comedians.
Yes. We should have a roll call of all the ones that's another thing. There's a very high rate of attrition in this job. There's a long roll call
as well.
of people. I mean, it's like
funerals that we've been to for comics is just like outrageous. Like we've had so many, you know, and you think like if you were in a squadron in the army, you'd probably have less dead mates. But yeah. Comedy world, like we've been to like dozens and dozens of funerals. I mean, the amount of people I've had to cross off my list for my gig that I can't book anymore. Oh well, he's dead, she's dead, he's dead. Like, I mean, what ridiculous! Sometimes you get two in 1 week, don't you?
Yeah, you have to have a seance. Are you available?
I mean, if I was a younger comic, I'd be going, well, thank God for that. I mean,
yeah, bed blocking. But the thing is that why our car insurance is higher? Because we're just seen as like a bad risk. Yeah, because the car insurance for comedians is so phenomenally high, and no one's ever. I mean, the reason given, which no one's ever really actually verified, is you might have a famous person in your car, and then if you're in an accident, they can sue us. But I don't know where this has come from. No one's ever sort of said, no one's ever showed me that actual truth. It might just be, I don't know. Is it a myth? I've no idea.
Well, I think surely it's based on the amount of miles that we do, gives us a more chance to be in a car accident because we're in our cars more often.
We get a lot of practice. We're really good drivers. Really, really good drivers.
We are really good drivers. Very seldom do comics get involved in accidents.
Minor one. I know Howard Reid had a minor one. And then that guy, he had a really bad one, didn't he? Oh, and then there was a guy that died. So that's 4. But that's over nearly 30 years. So that's nothing, really. If you think about the amount of hours that we all spend on the road, like navigating the highways agencies, late night road diversions, which I love so much. I love the highways agency. I want to marry them.
That also applies to life insurance, by the way. The premiums are higher if you are in the entertainment industry. Supposedly because of stress.
Yeah, another possible myth. I mean, there's loads of jobs that are way more stressful than ours. Can you imagine being a pilot? But what? Brain surgeon? What? You know, people go, I think you're really brave to do your job. And you go, what do? You go, you become a brain surgeon. You're like, oh, right, okay, then. And I'm the brave one. Are you mad? Like, you get squaddies saying, I could never do what you do. And you're like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. Hardest job in the world. It's not really.
It really isn't, actually. Once you get a handle on it, you're fine. Well, I guess you could say that for most jobs, though. You know what I mean?
So when did you start the Red Imp? What year was that?
Started that about 2010, and it was kind of ex-comedian Marion Pashley. She was doing a play at a theatre hub near me. She said, "Oh, you should start a gig here." And then I went to meet the owners, and I did, basically, and I've sort of been there ever since. At the Rose and Crown in Walthamstow. So there's like a big theatre upstairs, it holds about 100. And it's just like a black box space, which is exactly what you want for a comedy gig. And it's a little bit spit and sawdust, but it kind of adds to the atmosphere. Not round tables where your heart sinks and you walk into a room, oh God, round tables, we're all going to die. It's not like a normal circuit gig. It's not like 3 acts and 2 intervals. It's like extended sets for bigger acts doing tour warm-up. So I've got Stuart Lee on this month. No, you can't have a ticket. That went out to the mailing list, and it sold out quicker than Oasis. It sold out in 9 minutes. We had so many people emailing me crying because they hadn't managed to get a ticket. I was like, I told you when it was being released. Oh, I didn't see the email. Can't help what you do in the day. Like, it's not my fault. Mark Steele on in November. I've got nothing in December, and then I've got Zoe Lyons in January. Possibly, I'm just about to book Rosie Jones, and Greg Davies keeps threatening to come, but he never gives me any dates. So, yeah. It's like acts like that, really.
It's brilliant. I mean, does it make a difference, you being a comic as well, and to the booking policy or the way the gig is run?
Yeah, absolutely. And you must know this yourselves, because when a gig is run by a comic, and you're just more relaxed about it. Like, I got an email. Whose agent was it? I think it was Off the Curb, and it was Sean Walsh, and the agent was really like, I just to let you know, Sean won't be doing it now. He'll be doing 50 minutes. I'm like, I don't care. Why do you honestly think you needed to email me to tell me that? I really, really couldn't. Don't give a toss. As long as he's here, funny, I don't mind. I'm really, really laid back about my gig and like what the acts want to do. And I like, come and do whatever you want to do. I don't mind as long as you come. I'm cool with anything. Do you need a sport act? Do you need an MC? Do you want to MC yourself? Do you not? I mean, because I'm the resident MC, but frequently, if it's someone like, I had Andy Parsons on recently, and I said, do you want me to MC? He went, no, I'll just do it how I would actually do it on tour. So they want a complete rehearsal. I'm like, that's absolutely fine with me. So yeah, I don't mind. I don't have a massive ego. I must MC my gig. I'm like, I haven't written any new jokes. They've heard all my old stuff. I'm more than happy to take a back seat.
When you started, how many women were on the scene? And do you think there's been an increase?
I can actually name the women on the scene. Sally Hayward started a little bit after us. Jo Caulfield, Joe Romero. Who else was there?
Sheila Hyde. Do you remember her?
Yeah, and who was the girl who did really, really surreal stuff?
Oh, Sheila Martin.
Yeah, Sheila Martin.
Oh,
yeah.
She was absolutely so fucking.
She was fantastic, so and do you know what? She's the only person I've ever walked up to and gone, "Are you a Pisces?" And she went, "Yes, I am actually." And she was like slap bang in the middle. Never done that before or since. It was just so weird. And that's what, about 15 of us. Juliet Myers started a little bit after. I remember like getting an email off Jeremy Hardy, and he was complaining because Juliet Myers and Shazia Mirza had been talking all the way through a benefit he was doing. And I said, I know exactly what's happened there. Women never get to work with each other because there aren't enough of us, so we get spread around. So you hardly ever work with any other women. And they'd have just been going, oh my God, another woman at the gig, and just yakking away without even thinking. And yeah.
So how do you think it's changed for women then since you started?
Promoters are aware of the fact that they need to represent society. So they're now actively looking for females on the bills, because there's a lot of booking things on Facebook, as you know, because I started the Pro Gigs page 2016, I think I started that. And frequently you now get posts saying female required or female identifying required. And that never used to happen. That absolutely just didn't happen before. And when I book my gig, I try and have 50-50, like, 50% men. When I do my preview season, I try and have, boy, girl. Doesn't always work out that way, just purely because of like dates and logistics and stuff. But it's not difficult to do. It really isn't.
Do you think audiences expect it as well?
I had a year of all female headliners. I think I tried to do a year and I managed about 9 months. And when I said, on stage, I'm going to have all female headliners like for the next year. There was an audible gasp from the younger girls. They were like, oh, that's amazing. And I did kind of manage it really for quite a while. But there's a few all female gigs. I mean, my first gig was at a gig called Hysterics, which was run by, what's her name?
Oh, Laura Shaven. Laura Shaven?
Yeah, Laura. Yeah, she was another act on the circuit. Yeah, it was her gig that I did, and it was upstairs at the Totton Shive in Islington. And I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life at that gig. Terrified, absolutely petrified. And it's just like, I don't know, 25 people in a room of a pub. Like when I think back on it now, like at the time I was like, just like, oh my God, I'm so scared. I'm just saying that loud. Oh.
What do you think where is comedy going? Where do you see it going in like the next 10, 15 years as regards the online stuff and live stuff? Where's the future of comedy?
Yeah, we could already see that when you've got Jack Skipper's a really good example, but he's a really good example of someone that wants to learn it really well. He started making online stuff during the pandemic because he wanted to start then, but obviously there was no gigs and there were no courses, blah, blah, blah. That's when he started his stuff. And you don't need the big agents anymore, like the big four. You don't need those big four in order to become big. You can do it. There's another route basically. And that's for the youngsters that can be bothered to make videos all the time. TikTok, isn't it really? But it's good when they really want to learn it, because I had Jack Skipper on at my gig in the summer. And for a first hour, it was fantastic. He was really good. He was really, learning his craft. He's not trying to skip over getting big by using the socials. He actually wants to, knuckle down and do the graft. And that's the only way you can do it, really. I do see a lot of gigs and you just go, it's all four blokes faces. And I always think, really, you couldn't manage to get one woman. But sometimes I understand that like the dates don't work out or women don't apply. And like for those kind of like weekend club gigs, they've got a smaller pool to choose from, because it does take years to get to that level. So how do you find it with the male to female ratio at the gigs that you're doing?
I think there's a lot of good female comics in London that for whatever reason don't gig outside of London.
It is hard being a road comic. That like the late night driving, you've got to be really robust to be a comic in this country. Like, traveling around late at night on public transport is not fun as a woman. And you've got to have you've got to have balls to go on stage anyway. And then you've got to have like luster and strength to just like cope with like all the drunks on a Saturday night. You're coming out from, all that grief that you might get. But I think if you don't have those two, if you don't have that strength, then it's not the work for you. Because I remember at one point it was like the onus was on promoters to get women home safe at late at night. And I just think, be a grown up. If you don't want to go home late at night from that particular gig, don't take the gig. Maybe that's what they're doing. I'm not really sure.
I mean, that you hit on a good point there, because it's not, I think people think, oh yeah, it takes a lot to actually get up on stage, but everything else is like the travel, the chasing up payments, the getting gigs, and also, by the way, now you can be heckled on social media, can't you? After the gig, you'd be going home and you get a message, bing, saw you last night, you're shit. I thought, oh, well, thanks very much. I mean, conversely, you can get nice things as well, but it's like, so I think you've touched on a really interesting thing about the modern.
It's a tough life. Being self-employed is really hard, isn't it? Because it's a really insecure life. You've got your mortgage and your bills stay the same, but your income might not. So you've got to. It's like I always say, keep the faith, because you just never know where your next gig. And if you're looking at dark, because we always book like 4 to 6 months ahead, don't we? There's a lot of gigs flying around. I actually think it's a bit easier than it used to be. I mean, the money hasn't gone up for some promoters. I put my money up. Some promoters have put their money up. I think maybe that's another reason why people aren't traveling, because trains are so expensive. Like I always think to if anyone from Just Stop Oil is listening, stop targeting the motorists. The only reason we're on the road is because the train companies are charging £1 million for a ticket.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head, haven't you? Should be cheaper rail travel.
Anywhere in this country, £10 flat fee, right? And then like everyone will be out of their cars and on the trains, and it would make it would just be better for everybody. But like because petrol is so expensive these days, and gig money has. I mean, that's probably why women aren't traveling out of London. Like, I've got to come back late at night. I mean, the blokes are doing it, so why aren't the women doing it? You want stage time, you've got to put the graft in. I remember like buying a train ticket up to Nottingham to Daryl's gig for no money. I just forked out the train fare. But then again, it wasn't like, 70 quid day return at that point.
I mean, I recently did a gig with a guy, it was in Newton Aycliffe, which is in the northeast of England. The guy had driven nearly 7 hours from Cardiff to do the opening. I mean, that's just insane. Insane. He won't have made any money out of the gig because he was driving back the same night. Wow.
God. Oh, that's just painful, isn't it? I hope did his gig go all right?
Yeah, he had a stormer actually, which is good.
Oh, that's good. That's the only thing that makes it worth.
But she's like that all the way back.
And then you drive in your own head for 7 hours. Like, oh God, I'm just going to just drive into the central reservation.
Oh God!
I suppose you've had one of the biggest changes in the industry by setting up the Facebook forum.
I can't remember. It was a chat on Facebook, obviously, because I live on Facebook. It was a chat with somebody. It was an anti-agent group initially, wasn't it? Because I was like, I haven't got an agent, all these agents, blah, blah, blah. And then because it's so convenient and everybody's on there, agents started using it. And independent promoters like me, and because you were booking a gig as well for a while, weren't you, Paul? And it just because like a cottage industry, isn't it? Because there's a lot of independent gigs out there, not run by big agencies or big chains. And like, a decent chunk of our income comes from those kind of gigs. And I think someone else suggest it. It's so long ago now, I literally can't remember. And I just set it up. And do you know what? I was trying to find a post in there recently, and it brought up the initial, and it was 2016. And it was like, oh, thanks, I've joined this group, blah, blah, blah. And it was like the first, JoJo Smith was one of the first people. Oh, she was another one who started out, who was on the circuit when I started out, and Mandy Knight. And then it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And then we have to have admins on there. And, I resigned from admins in the end. And then we've had democratic votes about, what the criteria is to get it in and stuff like that. And now agents use it, like the Comedy Store use it for booking acts because it's so popular. And Mirth Control had a similar diary thing years and years ago. But because social media is just so prevalent and everybody uses it, it's like you can book a gig up literally in a nanosecond using that page.
Yeah. I mean, we were literally talking about this yesterday, weren't we, Paul? About when you go on there, you leave it, you look away for a second like this, and then you come back and goes, sorted now, thanks. It's like, damn you!
Faster than the speed of light. It really is, isn't it? But then you look away and there's another 4 gigs being offered.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I think the actual scene is booming.
There's so many promoters on there, because we used to know all of the promoters, and now you just go, I've never heard of this person, and they're gig down in Devon for like 200 quid, and you go, bang on, that's great. Do you know what I mean? It's fantastic that we are creating work for ourselves, and like. We are, it is such a community. And when Gareth died and we all put money in for his family, or when, we've had friends of ours that have gone off the rails and they're really struggling financially. I mean, I raised 11 grand for a mutual friend of ours recently, and it really raises spirits, and it's really heartwarming because we do quite a lot of stuff like that on a sort of semi-regular basis, really. We are a supportive community because it's so difficult doing what we do. And it's like being in a regiment because nobody else understands what we go through.
Okay, well, no, I was just going to ask you about the most important function that you perform. You were also the organiser of the annual Comics Christmas party, aren't you?
Oh, God, yes, of course.
Yeah.
It's her.
It was me and Michael Legg initially. Michael said, should we have a Christmas party? But we can't have it in December because everyone's too busy in December. Everyone's gigging so much. Let's do it in because January is really quiet for comedians, and obviously midweek is quiet for comedians as well. So it's always the first or second Tuesday in January. And Michael stopped doing it, wasn't into it, and then he never comes. It's like he's still on this protest that he never comes to the party, and nobody likes a party more than Michael. Is the irony, and everybody loves Michael, and I adore Michael. I sort of took up the reins, and we've moved venues like over the years, haven't we? And now we've found our sort of spiritual home, which I'm not going to put on this podcast because we don't want any gate crashing. And where we have it, it just fits, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit not a dive, I wouldn't say, but it's very, very well suited. You go down the stairs.
Yeah.
Shh, we can't say anything.
Well, it's been my spiritual home for a long time before you lot got there.
Yeah, you know them all by name, don't you, Paul?
I always get quite overwhelmed when I walk in because it's a little bit. I think everybody feels this because it's a little bit daunting, isn't it, at first? But then you walk in and you see someone that you know and love, and then someone else you know and love, and then it just never stops, right? And I remember the first time we had it at that venue, the guys who got there first, so there was like Peter Graham, man with a beard, Nick Rebel, Arthur Smith,
and me. I was there. I was in that corner, the old fogies corner. Yeah.
You were in the geriatric ward.
We were.
I remember coming up to you.
I was the youngest.
And I remember going, Arthur, are you allowed to have that wine? Pete, have you got to get home early? And I felt like a nurse, like just checking on everyone. That was the first thing I did when I got there. Checking on everybody's status. Oh, man.
That's good. It's a brilliant party. Yeah. Sorry, people that don't go, that can't go. Sorry about that.
And I'm always like, no partners allowed. And I think it kind of gets a lot of people out of jail free. Susan won't let any partners. Because, like, you don't want to be there with someone that needs to be babysat. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, this is something. Because you just want to run off and see all your mates, don't you? You don't want someone, I'm hanging out with you. Like, oh, stop that. Like, just be with your workmates and have a good laugh.
Yeah. It's like when you take, you have guests that come to see you live and show your family come. They go, where should I sit? Can I sit here? I don't give a fuck. Sit where you want. Can I sit at the front? No.
No, that's the only rule. Don't sit at the front.
Yeah, don't sit at the front. Okay, well, I'll have to say, Susan, you have had an oversized effect on the comedy industry.
It's really, I don't feel like I have.
I mean, the forum and the party. So get people work and then also give them a party to lose the money that they've just earned. I mean, it's just...
Well, lose people work when they insult a promoter when they're hammered at the party. Honestly, God,
yeah.
I get so drunk, I'm still pissed for most of the next day. It's literally a 2-day hangover for me, and without exception. Because like a lot of us, we all go for meals beforehand with our little group of mates, and then when you start drinking, then you get a bit of Dutch coat, then you walk into the room and it's like
Well, I lost all my bank cards at the last one, and my travel card and my Oyster card.
God, I mean that's standard, isn't it? Really, that's so standard.
Oh my God! How the fuck did you do that?
You don't want to know.